Welcome to a very special Underworld podcast episode for YouTube. We are going to be doing the story of Magdalena Kralka, a Polish gangster who gained a lot of attention over the last few years because, well, she looks like this photo you're staring at, but do not be deceived by her looks. While she wasn't exactly Griselda Blanco in terms of, the organized crime hierarchy, she also, didn't look like Griselda. And she wasn't a joke. She was at one point the most wanted person in Poland and had an Interpol red notice out for her. But yeah, this episode isn't really, going to be one with the same sort of depth that we usually have, but in terms of promoting the YouTube channel and getting more subscribers, you can't really go wrong here. You know what I'm saying? So here we go. Anyway, Polish authorities have accused her of bringing in more than 120 kilos of coke and over 5 tons of weed after she seized control of a criminal group in 2017. So yeah, like I said, she wasn't doing hand-to-hands here. Like, this was a legitimate organized enterprise that brought in a ton of cocaine. Her crew also made meth and brought marijuana into Norway as well. So they were international, operating out of the Polish capital of Krakow. They brought in nearly $2 million worth of drugs every month, usually importing them from Spain and Holland, which are generally, where you get your cocaine and your synthetics. Usually the cocaine comes from Spain because it comes in there really easily, and the synthetics, they come from Holland. They operated as wholesalers, kind of dominating the entire city's market at one point and using their fellow football hooligan ultras to settle scores. Basically, they arose out of Polish hooligan ultras. For my Americans who don't know what that is, that's like the really extreme soccer fans you see who are out there like busting heads and doing pretty violent and scary stuff. We talked about the Serbian ones a lot in the Archon episode, which is episode 1 if you want to go back and look that up. But basically, these Polish guys, these Polish ultras were a nasty bunch. And from about 2015 to 2017, that's when this gang took shape with some of the leaders of those hooligans. And they just started kidnapping and beating up rivals to eventually take over Krakow's markets. Like, they were the dominant group in that city. So they weren't a joke. And she was definitely, despite her looks, not someone you want to cross. Krakow at one point was wanted on a range of charges, including drug trafficking and others, but she fled Poland for Hungary in 2018 when the country cracked down on her gang. She actually ended up getting arrested after fleeing Hungary for Slovakia when law enforcement found her in the trunk of a car. But she was, the centerpiece, the center focus of this giant international operation trying to track her down. And the story of how she got involved with the group is kind of interesting. She was dating one of these 3 brothers who were at the top of the organization. They came from this I've seen Polish media call it a militia, but this group of just really hardcore hooligans who were the top of this football hooligan crew. The main brother was the guy who was leading the ring, who was this guy Adrian Z. And he allegedly got killed by Polish anti-terrorism police when they were cracking down on the gang. And Magdalena's boyfriend, who, like I said, was one of his brothers and was also up there, he got locked up for kidnapping a rival. That was when they were asserting their control over the market there, which is, what you do when you want to take over a drug market. You break some kneecaps, you do some extortion, you kidnap some people. And when he got arrested, a bunch of the other leaders did as well. So what you had was this vacuum of power at the top of a still pretty powerful organization with plenty of foot soldiers out there who just needed leadership because, they had this entire organization of ultras. Maybe not the entire organization, but they had a lot of people who were willing to live this sort of lifestyle. So what she did, she was apparently very smart. She took over. She seized the top of the hierarchy, and she reorganized everything, and she moved into this position of queenpin. She was, I think, 32 years old at this point. Now, I haven't seen any in-depth reporting on it, whether or not she was doing this on the orders from her boyfriend and some of the other leaders that were locked up. I don't know if it's fair to assume that, but, people love to run, especially media love to run with this story of beautiful woman who's a mafioso. They know you put that picture up there and you're going to click on it and read the story when you say kingpin, queenpin, mafioso leader, and she looks like an Instagram model. But, guilty of the same thing right now, so I'm just going to keep it moving. But basically, yeah, she was smart, but I guess she wasn't too smart because she kept up an online presence of Facebook and Instagram, which is not something you want to do when you're leading a powerful criminal organization. I feel like if there's one lesson you get from listening to this episode and every other episode of our podcast, because we talk about this a lot, is, if you're at the centerpiece of some shadowy criminal organization, if you're committing crimes, don't post on Instagram. Like, don't brag about them. Don't put them up there. Just don't do it. So there was another crackdown on her crew. She fled to Hungary. Hungarian bounty hunters at one point kind of located her. They call them headhunters. That's the translation. I assume they're bounty hunters. Complete international dragnet gets started, and they go looking for her. It's like a 20-hour insane manhunt. Eventually, she gets caught just across the border. She fled to Slovakia, so a third country, while this manhunt was ensuing, and she got caught in the trunk of her car. I believe she's currently on trial, and COVID has kind of slowed things down. But yep, that is the story, and thank you for tuning in to this bonus episode of the Underworld podcast.